So last night I went to see the new Five Nights at Freddy's movie, or rather, the only Five Nights at Freddy's movie that exists at this point, hopefully. And I just kind of wanted to do like an unscripted rant about it, because I have a lot of feelings, and a lot of thoughts and a lot of opinions about it as someone who was a diehard FNaF fan from like 2014 to pretty much now, I guess. I kind of stopped being caught up with everything around the time of Security Breach's release. I guess I'm a little bit out of the loop with the lore, but up until that point I was caught up with like the books and the games, and all the different news surrounding the movie and the behind the scenes stuff, I guess, like teasers on the website and everything. I was very entrenched in it, I guess you could say, especially between the release of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and I guess up to Ultimate Custom Night, probably. I was kind of in and out of the fandom. I wasn't like super into it between different games, but whenever a game would come out, I would be like, oh my god, I'm like back in Five Nights at Freddy's fanboy mode. Like in a sense, you could kind of qualify me as a diehard Five Nights at Freddy's fan in a way, even though I wasn't all that invested in the community itself, but I was definitely engaging with the source material. I wanted to talk about the movie because I went to see it last night. It was something. It was an experience. Apparently, it's not all that long, but it felt. I was worried that it would just seem really short, but it didn't. It felt like a decent length, in my opinion. But that's beside the point once again. This is what I get for being going on in like an unscripted rant about the movie. But I've had some time to think about it since last night. I definitely came out of it like really excited and just all positives. Now I'm kind of starting to see the cracks in the picture a little bit, but I feel like if a movie kind of leaves you being really excited and really happy about it, then like it's fine. If you only start to see the plot holes and whatever like on the next day, then I feel like the movie has succeeded. You know what I mean? Like you come out of the cinema feeling like it was a good movie, or at least it was a good time. Then I feel like that's a success. So that's kind of my opinion on that whole thing. We're gonna get into the plot holes once I actually get past my general kind of opinions and how I felt about the things I liked, which was most of the movie. So this is gonna be full of spoilers, by the way, of course. This is just me going on a rant and not really like something that's supposed to entice anyone to see the movie or something. I'm assuming that people who are watching it are either not afraid of spoilers or have seen the movie, which I recommend because I feel like watching it in cinemas is a better time, especially if you're a fan. Like, for example, in my cinema, so many of the people were like wearing cosplays, and me and my friends were also wearing cosplays, or rather me and my friend and his friends whom I hadn't met prior to that event. But I was in partial cosplay, I guess. I was going as I like to call the assified Aubergine Man, as in I was wearing a purple shirt. Yes. Anyway, I feel like it was a really exciting experience to just be there with the people who have been fans of the thing for years, and it's like it felt so niche to them, and then going to a cinema full of people who are also like dressed up as different characters and are so excited about it and are like referencing different things from the games. I feel like that's such a unifying experience for the fandom, and that just felt really nice. I don't know, maybe it wasn't the case in the US, but I feel like in Poland the movie wasn't really marketed. Like, I never saw any posters or anything, so the people who were there were either like people who, I guess, just kind of went in randomly, or people who were already invested in the games, which I think made for a very different crowd, I guess, than the general audience might be. So that's kind of a gigantic preface to say that the atmosphere was great. Like, when the movie finished, people like stood up and clapped and cheered. Like, that was the kind of vibe that was on the that was in the room, and it was incredible. Like, I had never seen that kind of reaction to a movie. Like, people were laughing and cheering and all that, and like getting so excited whenever there was like a reference to the games, and everyone's like pointing at the screen and like, oh my god, that's from this game, and that's what he said in this other game, and everyone was like really invested and excited, and I think the atmosphere really helps to absorb the movie and enjoy it. Unlike just sitting in front of a TV screen at home and just being like, I don't know about this, you know. So it's definitely a factor. I guess, yeah. Like I guess the cinema that you're in kind of contributes to how you feel about the movie, because like when I went to see Annabelle Creation with my sister and her friend, we were the only ones in the room, like in the audience, and we were sitting in the center of the audience seats, and around us was just darkness. So that definitely contributed to the feeling of we are stuck in this cinema and something is gonna jump out at us, even though the movie wasn't all that scary, but like it definitely made it feel much scarier. So I guess in the same way, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie was definitely another case of like the audience around you kind of creating this hype, or the presence or lack thereof of the audience. So the movie itself, like from the first like few minutes, like the opening scene with the night guard and stuff, I'm like, this feels so unmistakably Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, I know that's the point, but you know, you see adaptations, especially of like video games and stuff, that just feel like they don't really care about the source material. Like, they don't seem like the source material. This is definitely the other end of the spectrum, where everything is so Five Nights at Freddy's, like so unmistakably Five Nights at Freddy's. And as someone who was a fan of that whole world, that was extremely like nostalgic to me, seeing that you could make a feature film, not just like a super indie niche thing like a fan creation, but this felt like all this production quality and stuff being poured into this, like what started out as like a little indie game, you know, and that kind of continues to be, you know, not all that mainstream. I think like a lot of people have heard about it, obviously, because it's kind of become a meme at this point. I feel like the fandom itself is not actually that large compared to like a lot of mainstream video games or more mainstream video games. So it still felt kind of niche and really interesting to see all that money being poured into a project about you know, this extremely weird video game. You know, that was like incredible for me. Just again, I can't stress this enough, like the hype of actually seeing this on the big screen and people, like a filled cinema audience. And there were people leaving the previous showing just as we were coming in, so it wasn't even like one showing a day and that's why the cinema was full. It was just like so many people were seeing it, and that was really exciting. And the music, it felt very true to the games, like the kind of almost 8-bit-ish kind of spooky, you know what I mean? It's like this kind of almost retro game-ish sound that is very reminiscent of especially the early days of Five Nights at Freddy's content, like the Living Tombstone and stuff, which they played the end credits theme, like the iconic Five Nights at Freddy's song was in the credits, and that was incredible as well. So the movie opens and it's like immediately like you have a night guard, you have cameras, you have vents, doors, and you have Carl the Cupcake, which I didn't expect Carl the Cupcake to be such a prominent presence, but I guess he was. That was just something. In hindsight, I do think that they should have stayed away from showing the actual stuffing into the animatronic suit in the first scene. But definitely, like for the first minute or so of that scene, I was like, holy shit, this is really happening. This is the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I had the same feeling when I was watching the Dungeons and Dragons movie, where I was like, okay, this is Dungeons and Dragons, you know what I mean? It's like there's creatures and there's fantasy locations and Icewind Dale and all that stuff. Oh, incredible. Whenever you see like a well-made adaptation and it opens and you just can't mistake it for anything else, I feel like that's already a success as an adaptation. It felt very distinct from the start, and then like the 8-bit intro hit and I was like, holy shit, this is so nostalgic. Like I'm seeing all these things that I recognize and it feels like something out of the game, except on the big screen. So I really like the animation and the kind of showing of what is going on in a very Five Nights at Freddy's 2/3/4 minigame fashion, with the 8-bit sprites and it's seeming kind of innocent but also kind of sinister if you think about it. If you're like, I guess if you're like just going in blind and you're seeing this like yellow rabbit man and the kids, you're like, oh, okay, this is wholesome. But then you notice what's going on, and it's like, oh damn, you know. So I really like that kind of mixture of things that seem kind of wholesome but also are really sinister, which I guess is the core of the series if you think about it. So that was great, the title screen. Then like we get introduced to the main character Mike, which was fine. Like I was expecting him to just be like a generic night guard with no like personal stakes in the story. But then he had the whole thing with the dreaming. Like I thought the like lucid dreaming plot was really interesting. I feel like I've heard some people complain about it, like, oh, it's just padding or something, but like that's the core of the story. Like that's the main character's arc, you know? It's like it's important. I'm glad they didn't just make him like some kind of faceless bodyguard. I'm also kind of glad that they didn't make him Michael Afton in the end, but which I guess would have been interesting, but it wouldn't have made sense because I remember like when he first meets Aubergine Man. I will not be referring to him as any other name. And he kind of stutters over his name, like he reads, he has this file with his name and last name on it, and he's like kind of Michael, and then he stutters, and I was like, oh no, is this gonna be like a Michael Afton thing? But then it wasn't, thankfully, which, I mean, him kind of seeming so eager to hire him, I was like, okay, is this actually Michael Afton? Like, but then the main character had these flashbacks to him and his family and stuff, and my brain started going, okay, well, like, was he adopted? Like, did William Afton kind of, like, neglect him, and then he was adopted by someone else, and then William Afton killed his... It was just a whole mess, and then he had a younger sister. I was like, okay, when was he adopted? Like, okay, I'm glad they didn't go with that, because that would have been a fucking mess. Like, that would have been incredibly confusing, I think. So I'm glad they didn't go with that, and instead went with something a little bit simpler. I guess now is a good time to talk about the whole Garrett abduction storyline that was happening. I didn't actually care for it. Like, I think it was a little bit silly. Like, I really like the flashbacks. The flashbacks themselves, as far as like the cinematography and the storytelling was nice, I think. Especially at first, when it was kind of like you didn't know what was going on, and the kids were showing up, and it was kind of spooky, you know, like I guess as a horror movie is supposed to be, and that was nice, I think. I thought it was neat, though. We got to see some kind of like larger world that wasn't just the pizzeria, you know, which I guess would have been the easy way to do it. Like, I can see a universe in which this movie is just entirely set within the pizzeria, and the night guard is just a random guy who's just checking cameras and there are jump scares, but I feel like that would have been a disservice to the story. So I'm glad they expanded on the main character in that way. But the Garrett abduction storyline, I have issues with it. Like, why? Like, I feel like the whole plot was that the purple human was abducting children in the pizzeria, you know, while dressed as the golden fucking spring Bonnie suit. But then he just randomly abducts a guy, like a kid, while in a car, in some campsite, and it's never explained why he was there. It's that kind of bothers me. Like the whole, oh yeah, he just randomly kills kids now, like just outside of the pizzeria, just random kids. I don't know, maybe Garrett saw something that he wasn't supposed to see, and then the purple human, like, just kind of, you know, hunted him down as a witness, I guess. But also that's really silly. But then again, if we get into Mike having, like, a personal history with the location, then I guess Vanessa wouldn't be needed. And that might have solved some issues as well. I don't know, I guess I would have to see a version of that movie where that was the case in order to actually judge it, because, like, it's easy to, like, throw ideas around, but you don't really know how they would actually, you know, be executed. I feel like if Garrett was killed at, like, a Freddy's location, and Mike was, like, going there because, you know, he had the job offer and he kind of couldn't refuse it because of his younger sister and stuff, I thought that was fine. Like, him being kind of pressured by the universe, by the writers, into working there, I felt like that was fine. Like, you had to get him there somehow, but I feel like it would have been almost better if he was actually looking for that place and he figured out that there's a night guard job and he wanted to like do the whole lucid dreaming thing that he did, which I thought was really interesting. And once again, like he wanted to go in there and do the lucid dreaming there because that's where that's where Garrett would have been killed and abducted, which maybe it closed down, and he was like, oh, now's my chance to actually go there and investigate because there's nobody else and stuff. And I think that would have almost been better and less contrived. It would require less of it would just require less contrivance if he was just kind of there because he wanted to investigate it, because his brother had gone missing. I think it would have been easier. Just overall, you wouldn't really need Vanessa. You maybe wouldn't even need Abby in the plot, because she just kind of exists to, first of all, contrive Mike into needing the job in a way, and to, like, I guess add some tension because you're like, oh no, this innocent child is gonna be killed, and like I get that. I mean, she was also cute. Like I thought that her scenes with the animatronics were very wholesome, like the ones where they were actually nice to her. And yeah, like I think I don't know about Abby. I guess I'm gonna have to do some more thinking about that, but like I don't know, the whole Garrett thing is kind of a mess in my mind, but whatever. Moving on to the things I actually liked once again, because that's what I was supposed to be talking about initially. I thought the portrayal of the animatronics was incredible. Like, I was actually worried about them going too far in one or two directions. Like, either they would just render the animatronics as just like these mindless horror movie monsters who just kind of like, growl and screech and kill you, which would have been fine, I guess, in the context of the first game. But then as you get further ahead, it would be kind of weird, and especially them being ghosts of children. I feel like there's this inherent kind of ambiguity in the animatronics that was really captured in this movie, I think. The other end of the spectrum obviously would be what Security Breach did, which I have kind of caught up with Security Breach in a way. I haven't actually seen a full playthrough of it, but I am, I guess, caught up with the story and what people were saying about it. So like there's two kinds of ends of the spectrum of how you can portray animatronics in FNaF, right? There's either horror movie monsters out to kill you, and then there's literally just human characters, just fairies, with personalities and thoughts and feelings and stuff that like act kind of rationally. I feel like the games themselves kind of went from one end to the other, and I'm not sure how I feel about that direction. So I'm glad the movie is kind of firmly in the center of, they have some humanity to them, but then they don't fully act rationally because they're murder machines, So that was really nice of them to show the contrast of them killing some people but then being friendly with Abby, but then it turning out that like they were actually trying to lure her in. I don't actually know if they were originally planning to abduct and kill her, or if that was just the purple human instructing them to do it, and initially they were just wanting to be friendly. But I thought it was really wholesome, like that one scene where Abby was just playing with the animatronics and Mike was there and Vanessa was there, yeah. And they were all just like, it was really wholesome, and I felt like it gave this movie a lot of heart. Like, this movie has a lot of heart in my opinion, which is nice to see in a horror movie, and it didn't feel like artificial. You know how like Conjuring movies, I'm sorry I'm shitting on Conjuring movies right now, but like the Conjuring movies always have this like very artificial kind of scene of like halfway through, like around like the middle of the second act or something, the family is just like the family just gathers and they're like, oh, we have to defeat this ghost because we're such a nice family and the kids are so wholesome and we're singing a song and you have to care about us now. That's very shoehorned in, but in this movie it definitely felt like there was a heart, and it wasn't just like written in as kind of an afterthought into one scene just to be like, oh, we should care about these characters. I felt like the execution of the animatronics was really good, where they were very ambiguous, and I really liked that, where they were, obviously they were killing people, but then they were the kids, but then the kids were creepy as well, but also you could sympathize with them because they were literal like murder victims who were stuck. I felt like that was executed really well, because it would have been all too easy to just go with like they're just horror movie monsters, go jump scare, you know. So that was something for sure. That was incredible in my opinion. What else did I like? Oh my god, my favorite thing about this movie, of course. I am a die-hard fan of Aubergine Man, as you might have guessed by me mentioning that I was dressed as him in a way. I am not ashamed of it. I don't know what to say about it, other than my Five Nights at Freddy's theory crafting phase was between Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and 4, which was the time where like you had a fair amount of story, but still a lot of mystery left over, which I think that was the peak time for like theorizing. Probably like between Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and 4 in general was the best time for theorizing, and that's when I got into it. Yeah, my whole theory crafting thing was, I didn't like the assumption that people were making that, the purple guy had to be like this irredeemable monster with no explainable motivation. So I definitely kind of projected onto him in a way. I have a tendency to make all my villains likable. If you are familiar with my visual novel, my previous project, Absolution, you might be interested in the fact that I named 2 characters after members of the Afton family. If you've played the game, you know which of the 2 they are. There's also a Five Nights at Freddy's minigame in Absolution on week 4, where you are playing as a security guard and you're checking cameras. I thought that was neat. I don't know. Anyway, so you can kind of tell that I was into Five Nights at Freddy's a lot, and I kind of like the kind of more, I don't want to say sympathetic, but tragic, I guess, portrayals of him. I feel like the more we learned about him in canon, the less interesting he became to me, because like initially it was like he could be anything basically, because he had no face, he had no name, he had no set backstory, he had no identity really outside of just being a purple sprite who presumably killed people for some reason and then died tragically and horribly and was haunting you in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Like, Five Nights at Freddy's 3 will always like remain with me as like my favorite game of the series, because that was the first one that I was there for, like the release of, I guess, and just the atmosphere and the kind of going up against a single figure with so much baggage, like obviously as the murderer and not just like a random kid. Like that was so intense. Like I will always be singing the praises of Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Yeah, I guess that's just me, I don't know. I feel like the game was great with the story and stuff and the mini games but we will be getting into that later, I guess. So I was really anxious about the portrayal of my favorite person in this game, because like let's face it, like most of the characters in the game canon at least don't have a lot of personality. There's not a lot of character in the characters, at least in the first 4 games. So I guess William Afton was just like the most character of a character, if you can say that, in the games. So yeah, I guess that's my explanation. So I was really kind of anxious, because I knew that like whoever they would cast as William Afton, I felt like I wouldn't be satisfied with the casting, no matter what it would be, because, you know, what you get is never as good as what you kind of imagine in your head, like what you had canon, I guess. Not in terms of, obviously, like, I needed him to like look a certain way or something, but like, I wanted there to be some amount of like nuance to him, and not just like what he was in the novels, which was just like this weird guy who was just very evil. I don't know, like, I felt that was kind of cringy, where he was like, oh, my name is Springtrap, I'm so happy about being Springtrap and being killed, and you just make me stronger. And the book canon kind of seeped into the games, especially with like Five Nights at Freddy's 6, where he's this horrible, you know, peanut scrap trap. We've discussed this, well, I haven't discussed this, but it's been discussed at length, where Scrap Trap is bullshit and we hate him, everyone agrees. And his writing was just like, oh, I am so evil, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm so evil. And I'm like, oh, I don't like how this character gets like reduced to that, you know? So I was very anxious about how he was gonna like look and act and just be portrayed in general. But I am so happy with how he turned out in the movie. The performance was great. Yes, he was kind of underutilized. He didn't have enough screen time, in my opinion. But that's gonna be in the negative section. We're still technically in the positive section, mind you. And I was just so excited whenever he was on screen. For the whole, like, 5 minutes that he was on screen. Yes, I know that's not very much, but, like, maybe, like, 10, I don't know. 6, 7, I don't know. Someone should count that. But I was really happy. And, like, straight away, like, I saw, like, the first shot he's in, it's, like, just, like, the upper half of his face. And I was just, like, I had a mini heart attack in the cinema. I was like, oh my god, it's him. It's him. As I recognize his glasses from the trailer. So, that was the level of just, like, excitement that I had for this character and what they were gonna do with him. And I was not disappointed. He did kind of go in the evil, bad, Max Tabby guy, if you will. But in the finale, where he was just like, kind of, oh, I'm gonna kill you, Vanessa, no, I'm gonna kill you, Mike, oh, I'm gonna kill whatever. But, you know what, overall, the performance was great. Especially in the first scene that he was in, like the first 2 scenes, I guess, where he was in 3 scenes total. Like, he was in the, where he kind of qualified, I guess, Mike for the job. Then he was on the phone and you had footage of him, thankfully, not just his voice. And then he was in the finale, and I guess he was in some, this last scene where he was just kind of shut in the sealed room for Five Nights at Freddy's 3. So I guess he was in 4 scenes total, technically. I really liked his chemistry with Mike. I really think they had chemistry. That sounds really weird when I say it, but, like, they kind of played off of each other really well in that first scene, I felt. So that was nice. I don't want to say it, but I'm gonna say it because it's just an unhinged rant that I'm at. Like, not gonna lie, this version of William Afton is probably, like, the most fruity we've had, which makes me very happy. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Okay, now I guess I've ran out of positive things to say outside of, the obvious, where I guess I should praise it as well. Like, the music, the set design, the practical effects, all incredible. We kind of know that. Like, doesn't really need to be said. I'm not really breaking any new ground here. But yes, all that was incredible. And now moving on to the negative things. Oh boy. When I was in the cinema, I was not paying attention to the story. I mean, I was paying attention to the story, but I wasn't, like, analyzing it, obviously, because my brain was too preoccupied with, oh my god, this movie. So, when I came out of the cinema, I started thinking about it, and obviously now, a day later, I'm kind of still reminiscing and trying to make the plot better in my head. There were some plot holes. I don't know if I want to go over each of them and explain and offer suggestions for how I would fix it, because I don't know how productive that would be, because obviously, ideas are ideas, and they can also be executed poorly. I think what I said earlier about the whole backstory thing with Garrett and the campsite was kind of weird, where I felt like it would have made more sense for him to have been abducted in preferably this specific location, but honestly any Freddy's location. And that would have been easier to explain and just made more sense overall. I don't know why they went out of their way to introduce this other plot. Again, I feel like it's nice on one hand because it expands the world beyond just the pizzeria, but the way they did it is kind of weird. Maybe they could have had another flashback with the campsite that would have just showed how nice the kid was or whatever, and how nice of a family they were. I don't know. I'm not a screenwriter. I'm just a writer, I guess. I don't know if I count as a writer. I guess I'm an amateur writer. You guys tell me if I'm a writer in the comments. If you get up to this point of the video, which props to you. So, I feel like that whole thing with Garrett could have been overhauled to make more sense and be more coherent. But, so yeah, that's one plot hole, is why the fuck would Aubergine Man go out of his way to kill a kid at the campsite? This feels about as random as the whole Foxy throwing a kid into the Grand Canyon plot from Day Shift at Freddy's 2? I think it was in 2. I think it was mentioned in 1 and then shown in 2. You guys correct me in the comments once again if I'm wrong. Day Shift at Freddy's 2 and just the whole franchise, like the whole Day Shift at Freddy's trilogy is incredible. Lives rent-free in my head, you could say. I feel like it's a great addition to the FNaF lore. I consider it canon, kind of. So that felt really random anyway, where the kid was like just out there. Whatever, I've made this point a few times already, let's move on. So that was weird. I felt like the whole thing with Abby was fine, like the whole like child custody drama that he had, but the finale of it with Golden Freddy or Freddy, I don't remember which of them it was, killing Aunt Jane, the mean Karen-like lady, I thought that was weird, that it wasn't never addressed, and the whole thing with like, I have a major issue with Freddy's animatronics going outside of the pizzeria, in general. Outside of like very specific instances where they're like obviously like being transported by the company itself or whatever, but Freddy just like leaving the pizzeria and implied to be just like walking all the way to Mike's house and knowing the path to it and then showing up and then somehow making his way inside. I don't know if that was just in ghost form. Am I just being stupid? Like, was that just a ghost? Was Freddy not physically there? I don't know. It felt very Joy of Creation to me, which I guess was nice, but also it made no sense, I think. And then just being like, I kind of liked the whole, oh, Abby, come with us, and then Abby just immediately packs her bags and is like, okay, we're going to Freddy's. But I feel like that could have been solved with just the ghost and not the physical animatronic and also killing the... it was just weird. I don't know how... And the whole, like, Freddy getting into the taxi with Abby, that was silly. I thought that was too silly for the finale, I'm sorry. So that was definitely, like... I guess my plot issues just kind of ramp up around the finale, which, overall, I thought the finale was good, but then when I started thinking about it, I was like, this makes no sense. So that's the first thing, is Freddy leaving the location to get Abby and then killing the aunt and then coming back in the taxi. That was just ridiculous. No, please don't, like, move the animatronics out of the location, especially if they're just, like, walking on their own in broad daylight. It's not even Halloween. Like, for a second I was like, oh, are they just gonna say it's Halloween and it's fine? But no, it's not even Halloween. So that was ridiculous, in my opinion. Like, full on just ridiculous. Moving on to my next issue is not enough screen time for William Afton and Vanessa, kind of. I guess tying them into the whole thing. Where I feel like the movie would really benefit from, like, a flashback at some point. There's this scene where Vanessa looks at the drawings and she kind of seems to be kind of having some kind of anxiety, like remembering something that's really like traumatized her. And she looks at the drawing of Spring Bonnie and the kids, which is pretty important in the plot. I actually liked the focus on drawings as well. I guess I should have put that in the positive section, but whatever, this is an unscripted rant. I liked the whole, like, subplot, I guess, with, like, Abby doing the drawings and then them being important, and then there being drawings in the pizzeria and them also being important, and Abby drawing something in the finale that was neat but also weird. I don't know. I liked the drawings themselves, is what I mean. It feels very FNaF. The kind of like conveying important lore through like children's drawings. So that was neat. But anyway, I felt like this movie would have benefited from some kind of flashback where Spring Bonnie actually lures some kids, probably from Vanessa's point of view. Like, again, when she looks at this picture, there's this scene, like, it's less than halfway through the movie, it's like 1/3 through the movie or something, where she's at Freddy's and she's looking at this wall of pictures, right? And in the center of it is the Spring Bonnie drawing with the kids, and she starts getting these flashbacks where the kids are saying like something like, we love Spring Bonnie, or we love you, Golden Bonnie, or something like that. I don't remember. I think it was something like that. And she seems to be very scared, and obviously you get the sense that she was there before and she's tied to the murders somehow, which I thought was neat as a storytelling device, but I feel like they should have really jumped into a flashback there. Like, from her perspective, like she as a child being at the Freddy's location, because we would have also been able to see the location in a more polished state, where it was actually functional, which I think would have been very, very beneficial to this plot. Actually just seeing the location, because that's not really something that we've seen in like a decent quality outside of like 8-bit minigames. So I feel like that was a missed opportunity for the movie. You know, she could have been just hanging out at the pizzeria and she's talking to some kid, and then suddenly, you know, the kid goes missing and she's like, oh no, I know what happened, but I can't tell anyone because her dad is the killer and he would probably kill her too. As we've seen, he is capable of that, I guess. So she would have been really scared, and maybe he like got her to lure some kids as well. Like, that's, I don't know, was she involved in it? We don't know. And I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity once again, because it would have been really interesting and it would have given William Afton more screen time. You wouldn't have to show who he is, because once again he has the robotic voice. He's not immediately recognizable because he's wearing the suit. I do think that keeping the kind of, I don't want to say mystery, because like to any Five Nights at Freddy's fan this was obvious, but I guess to someone going in blind, you know, the kind of like, oh, the guy who hired him at the start is the killer, kind of obvious, kind of not, I don't know. If they wanted to keep up the kind of, at least the possibility of it being something else, they could have just been like, you know, shown him in the suit, having a different voice, because obviously he had the modified voice, and just luring the kids, and have it from Vanessa's point of view. I think it would have been interesting as like, as a scary scene, because all of the horror you see pretty much to do with the animatronics and the location is in the dark, and I feel like it would have been really interesting to see like just this living, bustling, I guess, location during the day, functioning, while these horrible things are happening, but nobody's noticing them because there's so much else going on. And the kids are just, there's so many kids and they're just mingling, I guess, and one of them goes missing and only Vanessa is noticing it because she knows what's going on. I feel like that would have been a scary scene, and it would have just been a great addition that would make her seem a little bit less wooden, I guess, as a character. I don't want to hate on the actress because I thought the performance was decent, I don't know. But it would have made her motivations a little bit more clear, would have given her more of like a tragic kind of, like, she would have just been a more tragic character, I think, and we would have been more sympathetic towards her, because instead she's like, from the start, she's this kind of extremely suspicious lady who just shows up and knows everything. So you just know she's connected to everything, and you don't really have any sympathy for her, I find, because it's like, okay, she's just luring him into a trap, she's giving him a false sense of security, she's probably working with the killer, or is the killer, you know? So, even without her being named Vanessa, because obviously, Vanny, security breach, help wanted, obviously. Yeah, I don't know, but that flashback would have definitely been a good addition. With, like, you know, in the 80s, with the luring the kids and stuff, and if Garrett was actually kidnapped in the location, you could have actually included him in that flashback. So you could have shown Garrett's abduction from Mike's point of view early into the movie, or even in the opening scene of the movie, and then have him like wake up from it as if it was like a dream, you know? I just solved a lot of problems, I think. And then you could have shown the exact same event, but from Vanessa's point of view, and you would have this like moment of like realization, like, oh, that's what really happened. You know, I feel like there's a lot of horror to be had in scenes where initially you don't know what's happening, but then you realize what's happening, and it kind of sets in slowly, like that ominous kind of feeling of, that's what happened. That's like worse than you expected almost. You know, I really like that kind of horror, and I feel like the movie could benefit from more of it, where you learn a thing and it's somehow more disturbing than not knowing it, if that makes sense. So Vanessa maybe could have lured Garrett into a location and she feels guilty about it, and that's why she's helping Mike. Maybe she's like turning around because she regrets, you know, contributing to the death of Garrett. I don't know, that would have been much better. And she had the like toy plane in the picture later, where she showed the picture of her and Spring Bonnie, or rather William Afton dressed in Spring Bonnie, which I thought the picture was neat as well. Too bad we didn't get a full scene out of it, but like, she had the toy plane and Garrett had the toy plane, and they could have played with it more, where she was actually kind of partially responsible. Maybe that was actually like the original plan, but then they scrapped it because, I don't know, they wanted to make her more likable or something. I don't know. I think it would have been better overall, and it would actually make her more sympathetic in my mind, because she wouldn't just be this suspicious lady. she would just have a motivation to actually be sympathetic towards Mike and change her ways, I guess, in a way. I also expected her to not be a real policeman for a very long time. I still don't know if she was, because you don't see her interacting with any other police people. It's almost like she's pretending to be a policeman to get into the location. That could just be the case. It's very strange. I don't know. I know she got the radio, like the police radio and stuff, and I was like, is the radio fake? Is she just pretending? Because you never actually see her doing police things. To me, that was really suspicious. Like, is she actually a real policeman, or is she just like being, putting up the policeman facade to just like get into the pizzeria easier and have Mike trust her? It's never really explained. In my opinion, it's equally plausible that she was just pretending to be a policeman. Anyway, so that was a fucking tangent, I guess, but Vanessa is full of plot holes, is what I mean. In her whole existence. And I guess now we get into the finale, and my arguably biggest issue. In the finale, all the animatronics are here and they're chasing Abby and they're chasing Mike, and I thought that was neat, personally. But then they pulled a Five Nights at Freddy's 3 minigame plot where Michael Afton just shows up out of nowhere. I guess he was just hanging out. Reminds me of the scene from Issue at Freddy's where the main character is sitting in his bedroom, and Dave, which is the name of her Aubergine Man in that game, he just shows up in his bedroom and he asks him, Dave, what are you doing in my bedroom? And Dave responds with, I've been here since 4 a.m. That's the same energy, where he just shows up. And this feels like something that would be played for laughs, in my opinion, which is not something that you want your main intimidating villain to do. Just show up out of nowhere. I mean, in the moment, I was like obviously screaming, and it was like, oh my god, Springtrap. They're gonna do the Springtrap thing, which they did, obviously. But looking back on it, that was probably a mistake. Like, maybe he should have just either stayed out of the location or found some way to get out of it or something. I don't know if they should be like, timeline-wise, if they're trying to do this around Five Nights at Freddy's 1, first of all, they've already failed miserably, so like the location and the animatronics much, but Phone Guy was like the biggest part of Five Nights at Freddy's 1's plot, and he's not in this movie, so I guess William Afton was the Phone Guy in this movie. I really hope Phone Guy exists in some version of this. What if he's played by Scott? That would be funny. That would be fucking iconic, though. I would love that, actually. Please someone make that happen, where in the second movie, someone just picks up a phone and you hear the hello. That would be, oh my god, I would cry. That would be incredible. Anyway, I don't see why they would put him in it. Like, I get that they wanted to kind of put their best foot forward, as they say, with this movie, and I really felt like they did that in a way, but in the sense that they put all of the things that make Five Nights at Freddy's 1 iconic and good in this movie. But I feel like, they were almost like too eager to do this big finale. I don't know. That's not even the point that I was trying to make. So William Afton shows up as Spring Bonnie, and I feel like he talks too much, a little bit, in this final scene. I know that he's the villain, he has to deliver a villainous monologue, but I don't know, like, the kind of, oh, I was trying to kill your sister and then you show up and you make my job even easier, or something to that effect that he said. I was like, it's cheesy, not in the good way, like, it's not campy, it's just cheesy, I don't know. But he shows up and the animatronics turn hostile and they're like, oh, we have to kill all the like main characters because he made us or something. I don't get how he controls them. He doesn't have any like device or like some kind of secret passwords that he speaks to them or something to activate it. He just seems to be mind controlling them, which is pretty cringy. Like, I feel like this would benefit from him just kind of controlling them remotely. That would fix all of problems, I think. Where the animatronics would still be the kind of antagonists, but you would still have this bigger antagonist who, would be controlling everything. This kind of mastermind antagonist, if you will. But that's not what they went with. They went with, he shows up, he turns the animatronics hostile, and then Abby, the child, tears off the drawing of Spring Bonnie that we saw earlier, which I thought it was neat. Like, it was like a bit of a Chekhov's gun, where you show this picture of Spring Bonnie and then, no, it's important in the finale. I thought that was neat. I don't know. The Spring Bonnie drawing was neat, is what I mean. Like, I thought it was ominous enough. Anyway, she tears off the drawing and she draws a new one, where Spring Bonnie is instead like has this knife covered in blood and the kids are dead. And she pastes this onto the wall, and suddenly the animatronics are like, oh yeah, that's what really happened, and then they turn hostile towards him. It's like, are the animatronics controlled by children's drawings? Is that some kind of secret code? It makes no sense, is what I mean. The villain was thwarted by a children's drawing. I don't know, it just feels extremely, extremely weird. And just, he's this big mastermind and he controls all these animatronics and he's very intimidating and stuff, but then he's just like defeated by a child. That's just silly, I think. That was very silly and kind of undeserved, I guess. They wanted a big finale and I get that, but like, they could have gone with something else, like Golden Freddy, or some kind of emotional confrontation with Garrett's spirit, who is now in Golden Freddy, or something like that. But instead they went with Springtrap. And I really liked seeing the creation of Springtrap on the big screen in that cinematic format. That brought some memories for sure, because like the trailer of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was the first thing I ever saw of the series, because I got into it like pretty much the day the trailer dropped. The friend got me into it. It's a long story, but that was obviously very nostalgic for me, but it made no sense. And that was just rough. Because on one hand I was like, oh my god, Springtrap. But then I felt like they could have saved that for a future movie. Yeah, so the finale is probably my biggest issue, where they just like pulled out Springtrap way too early, in my opinion. So the way that I would fix this is, because I should collect all the things they've mentioned. Get rid of the like Nebraska campsite plot, because I don't know what that was about. Garrett was killed in the Freddy's location. Vanessa was complicit in it in some sense, or maybe she just met him before his death, and that's not something she did with the other kids, so she felt more attached to it, or something. Mike is searching for clues about Garrett's murder, and he's lucid dreaming, and he finds his location. He wants to work in it because he feels like he's gonna be lucid dreaming there. The Purple Man is not involved in hiring him because that's weird. He should be brought in some other way, maybe as the owner of the location. I don't know how he was masquerading as a counselor. It was weird. I don't know. I did like seeing him in like an office job though. That was pretty in character for him, but still kind of weird. Anyway, Mike goes in, he investigates, and maybe he meets Vanessa. Yeah, sure, he meets Vanessa. Then Vanessa has the flashback to Garrett's murder, and we find out that she was kind of partially responsible, but then there's the Spring Bonnie mysterious figure that we don't know who that is. And then throughout the movie, you kind of learn she's his daughter and he's the murderer, and the kids are stuffed into suits and all that we learned. I thought the scene where she reveals that they're stuffed in the animatronic suits was neat. It was a good reveal, I guess. I mean, speaking as someone who, obviously was in this fandom for a while, that wasn't like obviously a surprise to me, but I thought it was executed neatly, where to like an audience who's not a fan of the game, that would be disturbing, I think, maybe. I don't know. So if they find out that the kids are in the suits and they have to stop them and whatever, and maybe animatronics get like suddenly go in this weird kind of aggressive mode where they turn hostile, and it's the Purple Man controlling them, and maybe the best way to include him in the movie would have been to just have a few like brief scenes throughout the movie where you kind of see this shadowy figure doing something around the location, like messing up some kind of electric device, or messing with the breaker, turning the lights off, sneaking in, sneaking out, whatever. I know, would that be silly? I feel like it would have been more true to the lore, where he's just kind of messing things up, but you don't get to see him in full, really. So I guess the whole shadowy purple silhouette could have been more, I don't know, I guess it would have been more true to the games. And you could obviously see him out of the you could see him and not know that he's the killer, obviously, but I don't know how you would do it in a way that's not immediately obvious that he's not the killer, because I guess you would have less of a cast in this version of the movie, so I don't know. Maybe he could show up as Vanessa's father, or co-worker, or something. I don't know. Or a fellow policeman, but like pretending to be a policeman. I don't know. I'm not a screenwriter, once again. I'm just throwing around ideas. So maybe he could be messing with the thing, and he could be like, normally the animatronics would be nice, but then you would see that he's tampering with something, and then they're not, and then they start killing people. So there's this element of suspense where you're like, you don't know if they've been tampered with at that particular instance or not. Something to that effect. And then you could have the big finale where Mike and Vanessa, they come clean, I guess, to each other about what has been going on. And Mike learns about the killer, but he doesn't really meet him. Or maybe he meets him, under an alias, like he did in the movie. And then they fight the animatronics, and there's a big dramatic confrontation with Garrett's spirit as Golden Freddy or something, and I don't know, Vanessa dies or whatever. Would it have been a better movie? I have no idea. It might have been a very boring movie. Might have been very bad, might have lacked characters, but I feel like those are some fixes, maybe, that could be at least considered. Maybe they have been considered and then they just couldn't figure out how to write them. That's fine. I don't know the whole process. I'm sure we're gonna be getting some kind of like deleted scenes at some point or whatever that would hint at like a different direction maybe that this movie was supposed to take. I feel like there's some missed opportunities, but overall, once again, I want to reiterate, I am like, my opinion is overwhelmingly positive on this movie. It was a great time. The cinema, the audience was clapping and cheering. The atmosphere was great, both like in the movie and in the audience. And in the whole cinema, actually, we were seeing like people cosplaying and people were taking pictures with us, and everyone was so excited and stuff, and like that was incredible. So the experience was great. The movie, I think, was also great. I might change my opinion upon like a rewatch where I'm being more nitpicky, I guess, but I thought that the vibe was great and they really captured the heart of the series, and I think that's what people should be kind of thinking about at this point when giving opinions, where is this a faithful adaptation, not really to the story strictly, but to like the excitement and the hype and all the things that like made this series so special to people. And I think that's where this movie succeeds. Yes, there are plot holes, some things don't make a lot of sense, but the parts that work, they work really well, and the parts that don't, I think if you're excited during the movie, you won't even notice them, which was my experience. So, at least for me, the movie really worked. I don't know if that's just a self-report on my part as being like, as like watching things uncritically, but I felt like the movie did so much right, and the atmosphere was on point. And once again, the portrayal of the animatronics, William Afton was, like, the performance was incredible. Even Mike, who I thought would be like just a blank slate kind of protagonist, was great, in my opinion. He had a lot of feelings and a lot of like inner struggles, and with the whole like sleeping pills subplot, and like Vanessa kind of giving him advice and wanting him to get better, I guess, because she grew a conscience. I don't know if I should be saying that she grew a conscience because she wasn't like actually complicit as a child in the killings, but she was still like supposed to lure him into the trap, like William said in the finale. So I guess one thing that I also kind of was thinking about was, where do we go from here, for the second movie? Because I feel like this wasn't planned as a trilogy. Like, it was planned as a trilogy, but this movie wasn't written as the first part of a trilogy. So I feel like the issue that happens now is, what do we do about Springtrap in the second movie? Because if they're gonna do a prequel, then they've already pulled out all the stops with the Springtrap finale, and they're not really gonna top that. So if they do a prequel, it's gonna be like, okay, I guess we know where this is going anyway. And they're gonna have to DH the actor, which I don't know how they're gonna achieve that unless he's just gonna be in suit the whole time, which would be a disservice, I think, to his acting. If I were them, I would not pull out Springtrap in the first movie, in the sense that, I wouldn't have the creation of Springtrap happen. I would, once again, he's responsible, but he's not directly walking around the pizzeria during the finale. You know, that part bothered me, where he was just there physically to be like thwarted by a child once again. So he wouldn't maybe be there. He would be thwarted in some way. The animatronics would be the main like villains, in the sense that they would be the ones doing the actual threat, you know, physically. But then in the second movie, you could do a sequel where, let's say, someone buys the location and renovates it, and you have the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 location, because as you remember, maybe, if you were around in the fandom, people thought that Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was a sequel, because the location looked more modernized. And it was kind of ambiguous at first, but then you got the date on the slip when you were fired or whatever, on the paycheck or something, and it says 1987, when the first game took place, 1993. So it was a prequel, but I feel like it would be smart to make the second movie a sequel. It would simplify things. It would be like, okay, someone's renovated this, there's the toy animatronics, the old animatronics are now delivered animatronics. That would make sense, I think. So, and then you could have the more hands-on, I guess, approach to the killing and the kidnapping, which would actually happen this time, because the killer wouldn't have been thwarted by that point in this rewrite version. And you could have like him actually going around and killing people, and Vanessa is no longer there because she was killed or something in the previous movie, so there's nobody who knows and can stop him, because I don't know, I guess Mike is involved still. Or we could have a new protagonist, but you could have it be a sequel, and then you see the actual killing and the kidnapping and stuff, and you would get to the core of, like, you know, the same thing happened with Five Nights at Freddy's 1, where in the first game you didn't actually see the crime happen, but you saw the aftermath of it with the haunted animatronics and the kind of ruined location and all that. But then in the second one you actually see the things happen, which I think is where the second movie should go, where you would see the murders happen. But then you can't do it with this in this timeline unless they do it as a prequel, which is problematic. Doing prequels is... I don't feel like you should make prequels excessively, so this should be probably carefully considered. So I guess they should open a separate location, like a new, like, bigger, better somewhere else, and the first location where the first movie would have taken place is still like ruined, and then in the finale they go to the ruined location and they have a showdown with Springtrap, probably similar to what happened in this movie, except without the drawing part because that was silly, and the animatronics defeat him, and you have actually the creation of Springtrap at the end of the second movie instead of the first one, so you would have more breathing room to establish Michael Afton as this big villain. And then the third movie would be a time skip, I guess, and you would have Springtrap and the haunted location, maybe the location from the first movie, which was where Springtrap is sealed, would just be converted into a horror attraction. So at this point you would have two locations, right? You have the locations from the first movie, which was turned into horror attraction, and the location of the second movie, which I guess is no longer functional, but it was a separate building. So there's Springtrap, and you could have this third movie take more of a flashback/dream approach once again, similar to the first movie, where you would be learning more about the victims, maybe. There would be some kind of person who would be trying to, you know, set them free in some way, which would require, I don't know, some kind of horror shenanigans with spirits and ghosts. I don't know what happened in the game, basically. And I think you would have a decent trilogy on your hands, in my opinion. Obviously, those are some very vague ideas, but it will be a good foundation, is what I mean. And I'm kind of worried about the second movie, but I'm hoping that, like the first one, it's gonna be a positive surprise, in the sense that, like, I will go in with relatively low expectations and they will be, they will be met and exceeded, as the first movie did for me. So, yeah, overall, if I were to give it, like, a something out of 10 rating, I'm partial towards 7.5. I feel like if it weren't for the plot holes, it would easily be an 8, because I really enjoyed this movie. That was definitely the most exciting movie of the year for me, which, you know, I was really excited at the D&D movie, for example, but it couldn't match the hype I had for this movie going into it, and then being in the cinema. So it was definitely something special, you know, special enough that it got me ranting into a microphone for like however long, over an hour at this point, which is something, because it's something I've never done, where I just go in and talk, with no, like, you know, I've done streams obviously on Twitch, where I've played Outlast and stuff, and Baldur's Gate 3, but that was like over a game, and stuff, but now I'm just like sitting in a silent room talking into a microphone. Like, that hasn't happened before. So I hope you guys can see how special that is to me, where I just felt the urge to talk about this movie at length. Yeah, that was just something that was really special to me. I hope my takes were interesting, at least, whether you agree with me or not. But yeah, I just had to get this off my chest because that movie was just incredible, in my opinion. Like, flawed, yes, obviously. To some extent, every movie is flawed. Once again, every movie will have some kind of plot hole, unless the movie is just has no plot. So, with the material they had to work with, and with how much they had to, with the like mountains and mountains of convoluted lore at this point, the fact that they went back to the roots to just recapture the heart of what made the series great, and what drew people in initially, I think they really succeeded with that, and that's really what the movie needed to do. It didn't need to be perfect. Nobody expected it to be like a critically acclaimed masterpiece, but as a longtime fan, this really reignited my love for the series, and I'm very happy with how the movie is. So I guess that's the bottom line, is I enjoyed the movie once again. Let me know if you would like me to do rants like these more often, because I have a lot to say on a lot of topics, but I don't know if there's an audience for it. So I guess we'll see with this video. For the entirety of this video, I've been playing my music in the background because I don't want to get copyright strikes. So I guess if you enjoy my music, you can also check out more of it on my channel, on this channel. I should have a playlist. Maybe I should work on a playlist of all my music in one place. The Absolution OST for my visual novel is out there on the channel as a playlist, but for example, my covers and my original music isn't really tied into one thing, so I guess I should fix that. I did release a new batch of Alice Madness Returns covers for my channel yesterday, as it's kind of a Halloween special, so I guess that's also a thing that maybe some of you might be interested in. Yeah, I should do more covers, and I should do more music in general. I've also been playing Five Nights at Freddy's 1 in a kind of competition with my friend, who I actually went to see the Five Nights at Freddy's movie with, but it's in Polish, sadly. I'm not gonna subtitle it because it's just me playing Five Nights at Freddy's, but that's also a thing that's happening on this channel currently. I am also re-uploading Twitch streams. I've re-uploaded Outlast 1, and I'm planning to re-upload Outlast Whistleblower, which I played like a week ago on stream. I don't know, maybe it's entertaining to some people. I think it's entertaining enough, in my opinion. I don't know. So I guess if you guys just like enjoy hearing me ranting about things or playing video games, then you can also subscribe to this channel and follow me on Twitch, and follow me on Twitter at navypink_dev. That's DEV. Yeah, so I guess that's all the self-promo out of the way. My throat is absolutely fucking sore after this ranting. I didn't expect to just be able to talk for so long. Obviously this video is going to be trimmed down to probably like an hour or less, but I've been talking for like an hour and 18 minutes at this point. So I will be getting out of here, and leave me some comments saying if you agree with my opinions or not, and how you felt about the FNaF movie, because once again, I thought that it was successful in what it set out to do. So yeah, I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions, and that will be done. That will be it from me for today. That was a lot of talking. So yeah, peace.